Coming up on Be Kind, Let's Rewind.
Today we have special guest Michael Uslan on the podcast.
When I was growing up, everybody else was told you could not read comic books and they were banned from bringing them into their houses. I became known as the local drug dealer because I was the comic book kid. Oh. Parents didn't want their kids playing with me or going to my house because they knew there were comic books there. He was a nightmare and said, I saw that kid. You were looking at all 4 of these comic books. You got to buy all 4 of them. Give me 40 cents now or whatever it was. And I walked out of there crying because now not only was I terrorized, but I now had multiple copies of one stupid comic book, which happened to be Fantastic Four #1, currently in mint condition, going for $985,000. Oh.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Cue music.
Welcome to Be Kind, Let's Rewind, the nostalgia podcast no one asked for, with your hosts, Chris, Leaf, and Shadwick.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Be Kind, Let's Rewind, the nostalgia podcast that no one asked for. Today we have special guest Michael Uslan on the podcast, so we're going to keep everything extremely short and head over to our Balls of the Week. All right, so guys, this week's episode is brought to you by Gotham Liquor, who actually happen to be all of our Little League sponsors, so that's a cool thing.
Our guest today is American lawyer and film producer Michael Uslan. Be sure to follow him on X and Instagram at Michael Uslan and on Facebook at The Michael Uslan.
Hey, Michael Uslan, thank you so much for being with us tonight. I can't tell you how excited we are. I guess my first question is there a 6-foot bat in Gotham City? And if so, is he on the police payroll?
The answers are as follows. He's 6'2", not 6 foot. And he's not on anybody's payroll. He's not beholden to anybody. He doesn't take bribes. He is the ultimate non-politician, and that's why we love him so much.
There it is.
Absolutely. That's definitely what we need.
So I've got to tell you, Michael, I've known Shadwick for almost 20 years. And I'll say, with the exception of his wedding day, when you agreed to do this interview, it's the happiest I've seen him, with the exception of his wedding day. And that may just be a caveat in case his wife watches this. I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, I love my wife. To tell you the truth, she is my Wendy Preval. We went to school together, and we reconnected about 20 years after high school, and
it's meant to be.
And
that's great.
Yeah, I found out that her favorite 2 movies growing up were Mr. Mom and Batman.
That's a hell of a combination.
I've got to put a ring on this girl's finger.
Now.
And by the way, my wife, I met first day of my freshman year of college. She wasn't even unpacked when we went out for the first time. And she enrolled in my comic book course that I taught at Indiana University.
Wow.
And
nice.
Without going into any detail, she received an A.
I was going to say, I'm sure there was no preferential treatment whatsoever.
Well, Leaf, your wife was your student, right?
Yeah.
She was, yeah. I taught martial arts for a time, and she was actually my student too. And same thing, no preferential treatment. She received her black belt post haste. So she did excellent. She was excellent.
Incredible.
I was telling my wife about you, and I was like, hey, this guy's a lawyer, professor, author, narrator, executive producer. He's the reason why we have Batman. She's like, wow. And you didn't even mow the grass today. So thanks, Michael, for setting the bar a little too high for me there, buddy.
You know what the key is? The key is, in all seriousness, I sleep 4 to 6 hours a night. and there's just too much to do, too much I want to do. And at my tender age, 90% probably now of all my friends and cousins are retired. And the vast majority of them have been counting the days since they turned 50. Man, like I could never conceive of retire. Why would I ever want to retire? I mean, I'm doing what I've loved since I was 3, 4, 5 years old.
So
I at my work.
That's fantastic.
It's just wild.
you haven't made that jump from New Jersey to Florida like everyone else?
Well, I will tell you that for 40 years we had a place in Sarasota.
Okay.
And I thought that was where our future would be, but we had 2 kids that moved to LA and got into this stupid, insane, crazy business. And they have since given us a few grandkids. So
Awesome.
Goodbye, Florida. Hello, LA.
So that's
There you
Right.
go.
You got to be near them kids.
So
Yeah.
that's David and Sarah, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Yep. And
So
and was this,
we actually all listened to your audio, but the first one at least, the Boy Who Loved Batman.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Great. Great job narrating, by the way. Leaf is actually a freelance voiceover artist. And so he's told us the horror stories of the booth. And we wanted to know if you experienced any of that narrating your own book.
Absolutely not. They said I did it in record time. Except for maybe 10 times they asked me to go back to enunciate a word or to read a line again. That was the only thing.
Really?
And otherwise I just blistered right through it.
you do have a very kind of soothing voice.
Yeah.
And I've noticed sometimes, especially when you're ending a paragraph, you have a little bit of a Casey Kasem kind of drop off there.
The countdown doesn't stop till we reach the top.
I'll tell you my real inspiration, not only for how I speak publicly or tell a story, and I'm kind of known for my storytelling, but also for my sense of humor and how I write, is Gene Shepard. If for ye uninitiated, Gene Shepard had a radio show. It was on in New York on WOR when I was growing up, and he was the ultimate consummate storyteller. And me and my friends would stay up late, in bed, turn on his show and listen to it before we fell asleep. It was like 5 nights a week. Gene Shepard went on to write and then narrated himself his own movie, A Christmas Story.
Only I didn't say fudge.
So
Okay. Yeah.
that is
That's
the guy
amazing.
who is my greatest influence.
Okay.
That's awesome. Because you do a great job. I feel like I kind of joked with them. I kind of felt like I was back at Reading Rainbow, and I was having some stories being read to me when I was listening to the audiobook. But it's one of those I would put it on doing some chores around the house or commuting to work, and then next thing I know I'm like, well, I'm gonna stay in the car for 15 more minutes and keep listening because
right.
you're just.
So I'm going to give you
captures.
I'm going to give you the secret origin of this. So I really am known most in the business for my pitching. It's become a bit legendary, which is kind of fun. And most people are scared to death of pitching, going in, public speaking, whatever. I embrace it. I mean, I absolutely embrace it. I've got a story I'm passionate to tell. And it all started when I was a junior counselor at a day camp here in New Jersey. I was in high school. I had 34 and 5-year-old boys. And my job was to keep them seated at the picnic table after lunch for half an hour before I took them in swimming. So how do you control 34 and 5-year-old boys? It was 66. So the Batman TV show was on. So I started telling Batman stories and I made it interactive. And anybody whose attention would wane, I would get in their face and pull it back. I go, Jimmy, all of a sudden a giant rock fell out of the sky. And what do you think happened next? And I would pull them back into the conversation. Let me tell you right now, pitching at a movie studio or network, it's exactly the same frickin' thing. I go in, I don't see executives who have the power over me or who are going to determine my fate or my project's fate. I go in there, I see 34 and 5-year-old boys sitting around a campfire. And I'm doing exactly the same thing I was doing back then.
So in Batman's Batman, you talk about a lot of your pitches. Is there one of those that didn't happen that you really wish, like is there the one that got away, Like,
shit, so many of them. Mr. Potato Head probably was the wildest one of all. I mean, I went to
the Frankenstein version.
yeah. I mean, I went to at that time it was Parker Brothers Hasbro. I got the rights to Mr. Potato Head, and this was long before Toy Story. Plus, if I set up the movie or the TV series, I would get a cut of the toy sales.
Oh,
I mean, it was an amazing contract.
Yeah, for sure.
So I go into the head of USA Network, and we had just done 72 episodes of Swamp Thing for them, which was a home run in terms of the ratings and how everyone came out of that. So they were very eager to hear my next pitch. So the morning that I was going in, I get a call from her, and she says, "Listen, Michael, I would like to bring in all of our interns and all of our junior execs to hear you pitch today. I've been telling everybody how you pitch. I think they should. It would be great if they could experience it. Would you mind that?" I said, "No, not at all." So I go into her voluminous office, and as I walk in the door, I dropped a throw pillow in the doorway. And I went in, shook hands, go to sit down, and she says to me, you dropped something. What is that, a pillow?" I said, "Oh yeah, I meant to drop that. That has to stay there." She goes, "Why?" I said, "Because what I'm about to pitch you is so patently absurd that I think there's a good chance you're going to kick me out of your office. And if you do, I just want a soft place to land." That's how I started the pitch. And she said, "Oh my God, Michael, what did you bring me today?" I said, "Mr. Potato Head." And she turned red. And she said, "I am so sorry." She goes, "Michael, we don't do Saturday morning cartoons here." I said, "No, I'm not pitching Mr. Potato Head as a Saturday morning cartoon. I'm pitching it live action in prime time." And the place, they were just absolutely frozen in their tracks. And then I went into the pitch. And we were that close from doing it. It would have been the most expensive half-hour show in the history. At that time, it was USA Network, all with animatronics. We had some great writers out of Mork and Mindy and other great shows.
Oh, wow.
And it would have been the new Bewitched, Munsters, Addams Family kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Amazing.
You talked about one Golden Age. I really wish that could have played out. I was actually hoping when James Gunn came into DC that maybe he was going to go in that direction. Maybe kind of have like an Alex Ross feel to the DC universe. But we've seen some behind the scenes pictures now of Superman in Cleveland, so it looks like that's going to be a more modern tale.
I pray. I wish them well. I pray for the success of that movie.
Yeah.
Superman can't withstand a misstep. It's got to be a home run. I have all the faith in the world in Peter Safran and James Gunn and the powers that be over there. The presidents of production at Warner Brothers, Mike DeLuca, Pam Abdi. These are really good people. Mike's a comic book fan, and I've got my fingers, toes crossed. And hope they succeed.
Man, could you imagine if they had social media back in '89?
No. I can't imagine because we had the equivalent of Krypton blowing up without it.
I know.
Yeah. I can't even imagine what it would have been like with social media. I thought they were going to surround the studio with pitchforks and torches.
I was 9 years old when that came out, and I remember being on the school bus. There was a boy a little older than me. He was a big comic book fan, and he had a newspaper. It was like just a sketch of Michael Keaton, and it was talking about he's going to be the new Batman. And below it was a address where you could write in a petition for it.
I got a lot of those petitions.
And, Batman was my introduction to Michael Keaton, and I never knew anything different. I thought he was great. Right. I still think he was great.
He is. Yeah. He is absolutely great. And Tim Burton deserves the credit for that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You're responsible now. Batman casting is responsible now for me to shut my mouth, shut my mind, and wait and see what they do when they cast somebody.
Yeah.
Because,
Amen.
like, that's the once, because, I mean, You kidding me? They're gonna cast the guy from 10 Things I Hate About You as the Joker? That's never gonna work. Oh, only he's like one of the greatest, if not the greatest Joker of all time. Like, you kidding me?
Boy, did we
Like,
catch flack on that one too.
yeah, oh, I'm sure. I remember that.
Was it the same thing? Basically, everyone hated the idea until they saw the first picture of him.
Of course, they said, "How can you guys hire a gay cowboy to play the Joker? He's going to destroy this role for the rest of creation." And I have a very strong philosophy about it. Every fan not only has a right to criticize, they have an obligation to voice their feelings once they've seen the picture.
Yes,
Right.
We had it with Joker. What a huge outcry, a backlash when nobody ever saw it. Oh, it's going to glorify violence. Oh, it's going to do this. Oh, it's going to destroy that, until they saw it and realized then what it really was. We had it with Ben Affleck. We had it with Robert Pattinson. I say to people, don't look at the cast, look at the filmmaker.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
And what is the filmmaker's vision? When you think that they wanted Affleck to be a 45-year-old Bruce Wayne who was done with it and frustrated and bitter and didn't want to be dragged back into it, that Pattinson was a young Bruce Wayne just starting out, tripping over his own feet, slowly evolving. He has to evolve his theory of being. He has to evolve into the Dark Knight.
right.
And and it was brilliant. I mean, just brilliant choices.
Did you get to read the script that Affleck wrote for his Batman movie?
No, I never saw it.
Yeah, I had just heard that it was going to kind of be based in Arkham Asylum, and he write, direct, and star in it. But I don't know if that was factual or if that was just internet lore.
Let me tell you about Arkham Asylum. I'm keeping my mouth shut on Joker Folie à Deux, which opens October 4th. It'll blow your freaking mind when you see it.
Awesome. We'll be there opening night.
With Lady Gaga and Joaquin Phoenix. Arkham, needless to say, has a very strong role, a very strong presence, and a very strong identity. It harkens back for me to when Tim Burton said in 1986 or 1987, he said, Gotham City will have to be the third most important character in this movie. Because if audiences don't immediately, from the opening frame, suspend their disbelief and believe in Gotham City, they'll never believe without snickering, seeing a guy getting dressed up as a bat going out to fight a guy who looks like the Joker. Right. And he was right about that. And I just want to emphasize one thing here, guys. It was Tim Burton who came up with, you read the book, what I always call the big idea. The big idea changed Hollywood forever. For better or worse, it changed Hollywood forever. It changed the comic book industry. As Stan Lee said to me, Tim Burton's big idea was what opened the door to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. What was his big idea? His big idea was that if we were going to do the first ever serious comic book superhero movie, this movie could not be about Batman. It had to be about Bruce Wayne. Right. That's it. That's it. And as Stan Lee and I talked about this over lunch one day, he said, really, Michael, the reason the Iron Man movies were so successful, they should have been called Tony Stark.
Yep.
The Spider-Man movies should really be called Peter Parker.
Absolutely.
Do you think that's because deep down that people want to see like relatable stories about the people more than they want to see the superhero? Like, what was your explanation be for why these movies are so successful?
It's why Stan and Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko created the Marvel Universe the way they did. When I was a little kid reading Spider-Man, starting with Amazing Fantasy 15, I couldn't wait to get past the Spider-Man stuff to get back to the soap opera that was Peter Parker's life. It's really an important part of what defined the Marvel age of comics and impacted DC, where they began to change from their old-fashioned stereotype cardboard characters and began to evolve. Who was Bruce Wayne? He was a rich millionaire playboy. Who was Green Arrow? Well, he was a rich millionaire playboy. Who was the Sandman? Oh, he was a rich millionaire playboy. Something had to change, and it did.
Yeah.
So we want to talk a little bit about the like we said, we all listened to The Boy Who Loved Batman, and you, if I'm not mistaken, there's a play opening up on
Yes,
that.
sir. I just posted it 5 minutes ago on
Let's go.
on Facebook. I haven't
Nice.
even posted it on Instagram or X yet. But yeah, I couldn't be more excited about it. This is the most important thing in my career since starting the Batman movie franchise.
Oh wow.
And it is my story of how, as a blue collar kid from New Jersey, I grew up as a total comic book geek. My life revolved around comic books. By the time I graduated high school, I had over 30,000 comic books dating back to 1936 that filled my dad's garage.
Wow.
And he never got his car in the garage ever. I was at the first Comic-Con ever held on the planet Earth. I went to
Wow.
work for DC Comics
Mhm.
because of all the publicity I got as the world's first college professor of comic books back at Indiana University.
Yeah.
So there's a pattern here, obviously.
I love that story too about telling the story of Moses.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. Speaking of a pitch there, man. Are you
Yeah.
kidding me?
That was crazy. Crazy good.
But this is my story, and now this tells that story. This play tells the story based on my memoir, and we're casting my mom and my dad now.
Wow.
We're about 10 days away from announcing the actor who will be playing me.
Sweet.
I'm with the Niederlander organization of New York. We are going to Broadway, and we're opening first in Tampa on October 1st at the Straz Center for the Performing Arts, which is this magnificent theater. We'll be there October 1st through November 10th. We've got a Tony Award-winning director, and I couldn't be more excited about it. It, like my life, it is a comedy with drama.
Well, that's the best kind, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you're
got to break up the comedy with the drama.
If you're a comic book geek or a Batman fan or whatever, or if you just want an entertaining, fun, but inspirational story, it's for you. And it's the kind of thing grandparents, parents, and kids can go to see together. And hopefully people will get a lot out of it and walk out of there feeling really, really great.
Or,
Well, we're in Chattanooga, Tennessee, man, so we're not too far from Tampa. So we may take the choo-choo on down there, you know?
Well, I will be present at least through October 8th at all the performances.
Awesome.
So if you get down, if you're going to get down, let me know.
are
Absolutely.
tickets on sale now?
They go on sale Thursday.
Thursday. Okay.
At
Thursday,
Straz,
tickets go on sale.
STRAZ Performing Arts Center, or Center for the Performing Arts in Tampa. And they have a website. You can order tickets directly through them. You can get,
And I'll put that link in our description. So if you can, go click on that link, go get you some tickets.
that'd be
It's
great.
an amazing story. Like
Absolutely.
the book is full of drama. Like you said, it's inspirational. It's got everything. And the way that he tells it on the audiobook's amazing. The performance, no doubt, is going to be.
I know this is like kind of trippy to me because like I'm interacting with the audiobook now.
Yeah.
So you did mention casting of your parents, and we wanted to touch on that because we all had tremendous parents growing up that were a good support system for us. You obviously did as well, that were there to support you through everything that you did in your life. And we also did too. And I feel like when parents do a good job, we kind of like to give them their props and respect, because I feel like nowadays it's kind of trendy not to like your parents or not to give them
from a
background. It just, that really resonated with me in the book, like your relationship with your parents and how great they were.
I appreciate that. And it was a different time than what you guys grew up with. When I was growing up starting in the mid 50s, actually it started earlier, but it came to a crescendo in the mid 50s. Comic books were under attack.
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Wortham had his book, Seduction of the Innocent, where I'm sure you all know he accused comic books of being the cause of the post-World War II rise of juvenile delinquency in America. He said if boys read The Adventures of Batman and Robin, they would turn into homosexuals. If girls read The Adventures of Wonder Woman, they would turn into lesbians. And comic books cause asthma, because children were staying indoors to read them instead of playing in the fresh air.
Yeah, and communism, I believe.
Yeah, throw that in.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
did you ever draw parallels between Dr. Wortham and Hugo Strange?
that's interesting. I could see that.
Yeah.
I could absolutely see that. He kind of looked like it.
Right.
Yeah.
It tries to manipulate everybody's thinking to suit him.
But Wortham did it. You see,
Yeah.
everybody,
that's
the parents, the school boards, the teachers, the clergy, they bought it.
Yep.
They bought it. As a result, except for two other kids, when I was growing up, everybody else was told you could not read comic books and they were banned from bringing them into their houses.
Right.
So I,
Were people
I became known as the local like drug dealer because I was the comic book kid.
Oh,
you're like the nicest human being on the
Now,
planet.
parents didn't want their kids playing with me or going to my house because they knew there were comic books there.
You kind of made this parallel in the book too, and maybe we can loosely say, did Elvis Presley save comic books?
He did.
Because of his hips. Elvis's hips saved the comic
and
books.
rock and roll music generally. So that's 55 and 56 because that took the politicians like Senator Estes Kefauver, who was one of the earliest politicians to understand the power of television. He was the one that launched the hearings against the comic book industry. They were televised. And once rock and roll appeared and Elvis Presley appeared, oh no, there's Satan. There's Satan. We got to go out. We got to stop burning these comic books. We got to start burning these 45 RPM rock and roll.
right.
There's always some sort of scapegoat. It seems like that. I don't know what was happening during that time. Maybe you could elaborate on that. But like, I don't know why the politicians and Dr. Wortham were looking for something to blame, I guess, for a degradation in society. Like, where did this come from?
I don't even know where he arrives at that notion to try to pitch that to someone.
Well, let me tell you, that's as a historian right now, that's been true of American society. You could go back 150 years. They don't want to admit that they did anything wrong in terms of bringing up their kids or what they did. So there has to be a reason. There has to be something else. So it went from the cakewalk in the 1880s or whatever. It became the Charleston. It became comic books, rock and roll. Then it became Saturday morning cartoons. Then it became video games. Then it became rap.
Yes.
So it keeps moving, but hey, we're society. We can't be blamed for this. It must be one of these pop culture things that are infiltrating the brains of our children.
Right.
I mean, I may co-sign on Charleston. I mean, just to throw that out there.
That was bad for everyone.
that was hard. That made me mad.
Speaking of things that probably wouldn't happen within the comic book code, your story about Jack Horner.
Yeah, you read that?
Well, I have not read it. I listened to your description in Batman's Batman, but I would love to read it. I had something similar in I think it was 10th grade. We were assigned to reimagine a fairy tale, and I had Little Red Riding Hood, but my Little Red Riding Hood was actually a working girl, and she was trying to skip town, trying to leave Gotham and go stay with her grandmother in the outskirts of Central City, and but her employer sent the wolf after her. And it was the same thing. I got a really good grade on it, but I was told not to write anything like that again in school.
Well, that short story won me a national creative writing contest, Scholastic Magazine's National Creative Writing Contest.
So is that story available somewhere to read?
It was printed in a book. It was called Story, the Year of Discovery, the best creative works from colleges and universities in North America. And the Asbury Park Press, my hometown newspaper, also printed it. And
Oh, wow.
I thought I put it in, maybe it's in Batman's Batman. I may have put it in there. I'm not even sure. I have to go back and look. But yeah, I took Little Jack Horner and wrote a Freudian analysis of it as if I was a psychiatrist. So, I mean, Little Jack Horner sat in a corner. Okay, that's a whole thing right there. Eating his Christmas pie. He put in his thumb and pulled out a plum. That's a whole sexual thing that I have to do that with. and said, "What a good boy am I?" And now we're into narcissism. So
Right.
And that was all kind of to poke fun at one of your teachers that found symbolism and everything.
oh yeah, my junior year of high school English teacher. She just went completely overboard with reading symbolism into everything. And I did it to kind of poke fun at her and at the class, and but it won an award. So
She's like, "This is the best thing I've ever read."
I loved it.
Can I ask you a question about in your book when you're talking about Otto Bender? Because I noticed that you've done several podcasts, and when you went, went to how long were you at his house, and how many questions? Was it 160 or 170 something questions?
Bobby Klein and I were at his house for 10 hours. And
so is that part of the reason why you're so generous with your time now with your fans? Is that a paying it forward thing, or
I am? Look, no. I mean, yeah, the answer is yes, but you're missing the big picture. The big picture is I am a fan. I grew up a fan. I know what it's like to be at a Comic-Con and see Jack Kirby and work up the nerve to go up to him and say hello and introduce yourself. I know what it's like to ask Bill Finger for his autograph. I know what it's like to ask Joe Kubert if he would draw something for me. So I totally understand that. I said I was at the first Comic-Con, and I know what it's like to go up to a pro who's sitting at a table, maybe signing something, and then he gives you more than a scribble next, and he actually talks to you.
Yeah.
right?
Man, that's what I grew up with. That how could I not do that? It's for the same reason I could never charge for an autograph.
And
I
you
can't
worked
charge
amazing,
anything
man.
to sign for a fan.
and you worked with Will Eisner too, right?
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
my God, I worked with the best of the best of the best.
I did get to meet Will Eisner. I went to a comic book art or a sequential art workshop at Savannah College of Art and Design. And this was the late 90s, I guess, 97 maybe. And he was teaching a class about drawing body language. And so I got to visit with him for a few minutes after that class. It was really something.
Well, let me tell you a little bit of one story about Will Eisner, who was the greatest graphic storyteller in history. Will Eisner and I were sitting at I forget if it was New York Comic-Con or San Diego. And it was a panel, and Chuck Quidera was up there. Now, I had done a lot of research when I was at DC. I worked on a book called America at War, where I reprinted the first Black Hawk story. I talked to everybody about Black Hawk. I talked to Will about it. I talked to Jerry Iger about it. People who were important in comic book history. Will Eisner created Black Hawk. Okay? He created Black Hawk. I think he laid out the first story. Chuck Quidera drew the whole thing. And later in life, Chuck Quidera claimed he created Black Hawk and that Will Eisner had nothing to do with it. And he was very hot-tempered about it. And very hot-tempered about it.
Was there a falling out between them that led to that?
I think Chuck did not like the idea that Will was getting any kind of credit whatsoever. So I'm sitting next to Will in the audience, and Chuck is just going off on this diatribe. And I turned to Will, I said, "This is not right." I said, "Either you need to stand up and let history record the truth here, or I'm going to go up to the microphone and I'm going to do it." And he said, "Michael, I have the spirit. I have all these other things going for me. I have all these businesses that I'm doing. I have my graphic novels." He said, "This is all he has. Let him have it."
Man, what a lesson!
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lesson.
And
Wow.
you own the rights for the Spirit also? Is that correct?
No, I don't. I don't.
Okay.
Speaking of rights, for I guess everybody watching this, of course, knows that you were the guy that brought us Batman, bought the movie rights, correct, to Batman?
A movie and other ancillary allied rights in a bundle.
So well, you talked about, giving people, I guess you had to collect the money to buy. And I'm not asking for a dollar amount or anything. Can you give me the pitch when you're walking up to people and asking if they want to invest in buying the Batman movie rights and
Well, the first question
ancillary
is,
characters?
who was I asking? And it was a mixture of lawyers, doctors, dentists, and friends. And I
Okay.
wouldn't let family in because I had been told
Smart.
if an investment goes south, you can't escape the family, and there's
Right.
always
Mhm.
negative
Oh
repercussions.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I was willing to do that with friends, and I had a bunch of friends that went out and lined up groups of people, and not one of them, not one, knew a damn thing about Batman. They were investing in Michael.
That's
Oh,
good.
okay. Yeah, okay. That makes
They
sense.
said,
That
"Oh,
makes a
this
lot of
kid,
sense.
this guy." I mean, I was a kid in my 20s. This guy knows this shit. This guy is crazy passionate about this. This guy has this distinct vision for what it's got to be. That's what they put their money on.
That's awesome. And that makes a lot of sense, though, especially if they knew who you were, because you just have that drive. Because I know I originally, when I knew of you, you think, oh, this guy, like, he bought the rights to, the Batman movies and ancillary properties. And then, dude, then he's just like, just rolling in it. Life was easy right after he did that, and everything's fine. And then you go read, listen to your audiobook. I believe the Icon series that was on Vice
Yeah.
for Batman kind of covered it a little bit too. And what a struggle, man. Like that
Right.
10 years.
Yeah, we
was-
just celebrated the 35th anniversary, but it was really the 45th for you.
It
Yeah,
was
no
definitely
joke.
the 45th for me. And it was frustrating. Imagine for 10 years having a carrot dangle an inch from your nose that you cannot grab. You cannot grab it. It was incredibly frustrating. And we went director to director to director. It was company to company to company. Originally, it was going to be a Universal picture.
Mm-hmm.
And then backroom stuff happened. And then that deal was canceled and it was moved over to Filmways. Then crazy shit happened. And then that deal was canceled. Then it went over to 20th Century Fox. That was a 10-month negotiation that in the end couldn't come to terms. And then finally Warner Brothers came into it.
And
My goodness.
and
man.
you worked at United.
United Artists. Yeah.
So, and was that the place that said that they would never do a Batman movie because of Annie?
No, that was Columbia.
Okay.
UA was just as cockamamie as they were.
Yeah.
The guy I spoke to there, who was one of the production vice presidents, and every word out of his mouth was an expletive. So, like, I have to give you every other word of my rejection at UA, my alma mater. He said, "Michael, you're crazy. Batman and Robin will never be successful as a movie because the movie that's been out recently, Robin and Marion, didn't do well." Now, that was a movie with Sean Connery and Audrey Hepburn about an aging Robin Hood and Maid
Right.
Marian. So welcome to Hollywood, guys.
Yeah, it had the name Robin in
Yep.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, hey, speaking of Robin, with Batman '89, I remember hearing something about Robin Williams audition for Joker, as
No.
well as John Lithgow.
No, there was no auditions.
Okay.
Different people at different times with everybody. You throw out names in a meeting or you make lists, but that doesn't necessarily mean, oh, this was going to be their role or they had an actual offer or anything like that.
Well,
Or you draw on a newspaper.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew that Jack was your first go-to on that.
He was my only choice. Yeah,
And
early on, before I saw the Shining photograph, I thought Peter O'Toole might be a good choice to do it.
Yeah.
But once I saw the Shining, the Here's Johnny shot, I knew, no, it's got to be Nicholson. It's got to be.
I actually just watched it again last night for the 500th time probably, and it's funny, even though I've seen it so many times, I'll still pick up new things. The part where Jack is at the museum where he's dancing around and you know, vandalizing the paintings.
Mm-hmm.
I never realized like how much fun it looks like he's actually having there. But was he in good spirits when he was on set?
Oh yeah, but very intense. He was a very, very, very intense guy. But you look at that sequence in the museum, you'll see a lot of editing issues, like where all of a sudden one painting is covered with paint, and then in the next shot it's not, and then the next shot it is. The next time you see it, keep your eye on all the different paintings at the Flugelheim. And
I always wondered if he hurt his hand when he hit that little iron statue. He knocks it off.
The greatest story in the history of Hollywood that I ever had, I can't tell you. It's a Jack Nicholson story, but I cannot repeat it. I mean, it's just
that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
That guy seems like a wild card forever, born and raised.
Well, I remember because we were all like 9 or 10 when this came out. And Leaf, what year was it that you actually got paralyzed?
It was 1992, 93.
So I remember visiting you in the hospital as a kid, and we were bringing Batman toys and stuff. And is that where you kind of got into comics, Leaf?
That is actually where I got into comics. So after that happened, I mean, this was of course before the internet. We didn't have our cell phones to keep ourselves busy, in trying times and things of that nature. My uncles had a bunch of comics just stored in boxes, and one of my cousins brought me that box and just was like, here, go through these. And my brother and I kind of sat down and just started looking through them, and we're just absolutely enthralled with this time capsule of books. And that was my sort of introduction, sort of later than some kids, but we had Nintendo and things of that nature to kind of bide our time with. But that was my introduction. And after that, I still have that box somewhere, of course, in this house.
That's awesome.
They kind of kept me company during a hard time. I know in your audiobook, I mean, you kind of talk about the escapism when you were a young child, and that really hit with me because that's what they were for me as well, sort of, much further into the future, that you just kind of can fall into these other worlds and these other characters. And I really did enjoy that part of the audiobook and your life. That really hit home with me.
Thank you for that. For me, as I said in the book, I'm not a sports guy. I never was. My older brother was a superstar in every sport, and I could barely swing a bat. So I retreated from team sports and that whole thing into the world of superheroes. And that's what drove me there. There was an incident with my coach of my Pee Wee League team when I was 8. If you could imagine this, a coach of a team calling over the kids who struck out during the game, just out of earshot of our parents, and screaming in my face, I'm 8 years old, "You look like a clown out there, kid. You cost us the game. Get the hell out of my sight."
Jeez.
That's...
I can't imagine it.
Tobacco in his mouth, and he's
just right. No,
he was He was one of my first supervillains in my life. I saw everybody as superheroes and supervillains.
Yeah,
I had superhero teachers and parents, but I had, my God, the guy who owned the comic book and tobacco store in town, who looked like Hitler.
The mean guy that made you buy 4 copies of Fantastic Four.
Yeah. He was screaming. I mean, I was shaking like a leaf, and you were afraid to walk in there, and it was horrible. He was a nightmare, and said, "I saw that kid. You were looking at all 4 of these comic books. You got to buy all 4 of them. Give me 40 cents now," or whatever it was, 30. I forget what it was. And I said, "But they're the same comic book. They're all the same issue." He goes, "I don't care. You were looking at them, and they're ruined. And if you don't give me your money now, I'm going to lock you in the bathroom. And you'll never see your parents again. And I'll call the cops." What? So I had my lunch money. This is an adult doing this to a kid who was like 9 years old. I gave him my lunch money. I gave him my secret dime that my parents gave me in case I needed to make an emergency phone call.
Oh my gosh.
And I walked out of there crying because now not only was I terrorized, but I now had multiple copies of one stupid comic book, which happened to be Fantastic Four #1.
Yeah. Yeah.
Currently in mint condition, going for $985,000.
Oh,
Yeah, karma finds a way to come back around.
That was old man Tepid.
oh man, happened.
Yeah, screw you, old
Thanks
man
to that
Tepid.
guy.
So in the mid '80s, what were those books worth then?
In the mid '80s,
Yeah,
I don't remember.
I was just thinking about you were looking for funding to buy the rights to Batman.
No, I sold 20,000 comic books in 1973 in order to buy my girlfriend, soon to be my wife, her engagement ring, her wedding ring, and a 2-week honeymoon in Europe.
Wow,
Man, that's crazy.
So I still have one copy of FF1, but I sold the other 2 or 3 back then.
Dude, that's love right there, man. Selling your comic books so you can get your wife, y'all can go. That's a cool
Well,
scene,
what I'm doing now, you guys, I've donated now over 45,000 comic books and memorabilia to Indiana University's Lilly Library, which is its rare book library. And as we're talking right now, I am slowly tearing apart my gigantic 3rd floor Batcave, and I'm going to be sending thousands and thousands of more stuff to them.
That's awesome. So I know you said you're not a sports guy, but I got to ask, Indiana University, we talked about some violence earlier. Bobby Knight, did you ever meet him?
Sure. One of my heroes.
That's awesome. Really?
Bobby
So,
Knight, one of my
man,
heroes.
that's great.
My
Always loved Bobby.
My next door neighbors back in circa 75, 76 were Quinn Buckner and the team that went like 62-1 between 1975, 76.
wow.
Wow.
I mean, it was an amazing time to be at IU, and Bobby Knight was beloved by all of us.
Oh yeah, I always respect him. Like I picked up on him late. I picked up on the Sports Center era of Bobby Knight, but probably in the '90s or whatever. And last sports question I will ask. I know you're a Yankees fan. We are all Braves fans, but that's okay. We can get along. Who's your favorite Yankee of all time? If you had to pick,
Mickey Mantle.
Can you do that?
I have his jersey,
I like it.
and I still
really?
have some of his baseball cards that I saved since I was a kid, including my favorite baseball card of all from 1962. It's called Manager's Dream, and it was Mickey Mantle and Willie Mays on the same baseball card.
Oh wow.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. So Willie just passed recently, I believe, right?
Yeah, and then when my son was growing up, it was Derek Jeter and Mariano Rivera.
Yeah, well, you have to.
And now it would be Aaron Judge, Anthony Volpe, and this new kid, Ben Rice, who just
Yeah.
I was at the game when he hit 3 home runs. He's the first rookie in the history of the Yankees to hit 3 home runs in a game. And he drove in 7 runs, which was only done by one other rookie named Lou Gehrig in the history of the Yankees.
Who went on to have mild success in his career.
Yeah.
Was that the game where you met Kevin Costner?
No, the Costner game was a couple of weeks earlier. That was Ben Rice's first game when he got his first hit.
Wow, that's awesome, man. So that's cool. I'm sorry to derail us on sports. I'm a sports nut as well, but
that's absolutely fine.
Well, and also we figure you get asked the same questions over and over again.
Yeah,
I do.
I'm a big fan of you, obviously for Batman, but aside from that, not that you haven't worked your ass off to do everything that you've done, but it's almost a Forrest Gump thing too. It's like you've done so much impressive things.
Yeah,
I have met everybody in history, and I have been at like every major historical event. It's exactly like Forrest Gump.
Yeah, and you even threw out the first pitch of a baseball game.
I did. Dodger game.
How was that? How was that?
Oh man. Okay. So we're gonna. Is it okay if we run over the hour?
Dude, we will go as long as you want to go.
All right.
Absolutely.
So my son David was on the board of the Stan Lee Foundation, and they arranged to. I went in and spoke to some really, really rough, tough high schools around Compton and Watts in Los Angeles, and then we brought all the kids over to Dodger Stadium, got them on the field for batting practice, and everybody was going to be in a suite. And we're on the field watching batting practice. my son's next to me, and this guy in a suit comes up to me, goes, "Mr. Uslan, I'm so-and-so with the Dodgers. We've got a problem and we need your help." I go, "How can I help you?" He said, "Stan Lee was supposed to throw out the first pitch today because it was either the opening of Thor 1 or 2. Okay. And he just called us. He's stuck in traffic and he can't make it. We know who you are. We know about your Batman thing. He said, would you throw out the first pitch today?" I said, "Oh my God, what an incredible honor. I love baseball. I love baseball. That is great." I said, "I'll need about a half an hour on the side throwing with my son over here because I love baseball so much. The biggest humiliation of my life would be if I bounced it. And I have not thrown a baseball since this guy who's now 40, was in Little League." And
dude, you got to get loose too.
Yeah.
You can't go out there cold.
Can't bounce it. I got to see what I could do. He said, "Mr. Uslan, this is happening in 3 minutes."
No.
So I said, "I'm sorry." I said, "I have to turn it down." I said, "Seriously, the humiliation of bouncing the pitch would be too great for me to deal with." And with that, my son David gets in my face. He goes, "Dad,
all right, David,
look at that pitcher's mound." And I'm looking at the pitcher's mound. He goes, "Dad, Sandy Koufax stood on that pitcher's mound." And I said, "I'll do it."
Yep.
Next thing I know, I'm lined up on the first baseline with all the Dodgers. I got a ball in my hand. The Star Spangled Banner's playing. Then the next thing I hear is over the system, "Ladies and gentlemen, and this guy from the Dodgers is walking me out. I get to the pitcher's mound and I look at the catcher. He is 5 miles away. I'm serious. You think that's all it is X number?
Yeah.
It is so far. It is so far. And all I could think of, I said, okay, if I hold on to the ball too long, I'll throw it down. I've got to release it high. I am going to throw this sucker as hard as I can. I don't give a shit if my arm pops out of my socket. I don't care if it lands in the 5th row of the seats. I am not going to bounce this." I just let it rip. The catcher was down and crouched, and he jumps up and he catches it right here.
Oh, that's awesome. There it is. Got it over the plate.
And I walk to him. He walks to me, shakes my hand, gives me the ball. First one out of the bullpen, Don Mattingly.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So he's the first one to congratulate me. It was
that's great.
It was amazing.
That's incredible, man. Yeah, that's my uncle. Actually, he passed away last year, but my uncle, he lived in San Francisco, and he was at a friend's bar, and he just looks over to his right. It was before they opened, and he said, "Is that Sandy Koufax?" And he's like, "Yeah, that's Sandy Koufax." And he said, "I went over and drank a couple of beers and hung out with Sandy Koufax for an hour, and he was like the coolest guy in the world."
I had breakfast with Ted Williams. I mean, I have.
Oh my gosh!
Really? I was friendly with Yogi Berra. I mean, I could go on and on with this stuff, but postscript. About 3 weeks later, I'm watching the Dodger game, and at that point, Bruce Willis was Mr. Action Hero in movies, and Bruce Willis was throwing out the first pitch. So he does the windup, takes it, and throws it. He almost broke his toe. He threw it directly down. It hits the ground. It dribbles about 9 inches, and I just felt great.
Yep. You're like, yep. You look over on the wall where your ball's mounted, and you're like, yep, I did that. Yep, we're good. That's awesome, man. I could definitely talk sports and sports history with you for about 7 days. So we'll get back on track a little bit. I'm kind of a musician. I play drums. We kind of dabble as a musicians, not really. The guy from Oingo Boingo going to write the score for Batman. Again, talk about wait till it happens instead of like, I had no idea that Danny Elfman was in Oingo Boingo until I did some research. And I was like, how do you write that? Yeah. And then you come write this score. Like that blew my freaking, like, I think, Freddie Mercury and guys from Queen could do stuff like that. But to be that diverse is insane.
Yeah. And he was writing it for the director of Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Right.
Exactly.
and I'll tell you,
even my bike.
Just like I was saying,
why they tried to fry me.
So like I was saying, I watched it just last night, and I don't skip through the opening scene. the opening credits, where that music is kind of building. And the first time I watched it, I still remember just like it was yesterday. I didn't know what I was seeing, the concrete as it's kind of spinning around, and then you see your name pop up right before you see that it's actually the Bat logo. But man, just that opening music is so powerful.
Well, take us back to like when you debut. Like, so when you watched this for the first time, because you had an interesting story, because we're big Sylvester Stallone fans and Arnold fans. We're 90s kids, right? You were there when Stallone is freaking debuting Rocky.
Yeah.
Like you saw him pacing back and forth.
And am I mistaken, or did you
nuts.
say the movie was a little boring?
What movie?
Rocky.
First half hour. No. No, there's a story behind this. So I was in charge of the legal business affairs of Rocky, and Rocky 2 and Rocky 3. And so I was in the midst of all of this stuff. And I had not seen a cut of the film. This was the first time that I was seeing it, and it was United Artists took over the Criterion Theater on Times Square. So it was jam-packed, all with UA people. So it was a great audience, And I had been told that it is you're going to see one of the most exciting movies of all time. Now, we're a half hour into it, and I've seen Bupkis the dog, and I've seen Cuff and Link the turtles.
Hey, yo, Bupkis.
And and I know we've got like an hour to go. And I turned to my wife, I said, apparently something amazing is about to happen for the last hour of this movie. And I said, before it does, I'm going to the bathroom. And that's when I went back into the lobby and almost ran into Stallone. He was going back and forth, checking the audience's reaction. But
you Forrest Gumped it.
Yeah, that's right.
So fast forward from there to when you're at the Batman 89 debut. Are your nerves on the level you think that Stallone's were on? Like, how are you feeling when you're watching this thing debut?
All right, so are we talking about the first time I saw the completed picture, which was only with about 7 or 8 people, or are we talking about the premiere?
The premiere.
Yeah.
All right, the first amazing thing about the premiere, we're in the limo, and it's in Westwood in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. 2 theaters simultaneously next to each other. And starting about, I don't know, a half a mile away, the crowds became thicker and thicker, like 5, 6 deep. Nice. People dressed up as Joker, people dressed up as Batman, and other villains. And it was a mania. It was a mania. And we knew that people were already sleeping online for like days to get into the first showings.
Wow.
And this is, without cell phones, you couldn't get pizzas delivered to you online. It was a different time. But for me, being the comic book geek I am, every major star in Hollywood was there. And I was only concerned, I was hanging out with Stan Lee and Bob Kane.
Nice.
That was my thing. And it was while we were standing there before we went in, Stan and Bob, who were good friends, were razzing each other. And Stan turns to Bob, he goes, I could have really made a success out of this Batman if I had been the one writing it. And so Bob Kane said, yeah, well, I could have made a bigger success out of Spider-Man if I was drawing it. He said, if I had been drawing Spider-Man, maybe you would have a movie. And I'm standing there with the two of them, and I'm going, wait a minute. What would Batman have looked like if it was created by Stan Lee at Marvel?
Oh.
What would Superman, Wonder Woman, what would they look like if they had all been done by Stan and Jack and Steve at Marvel? And that festered in me for years. And in the year 2000, I brought Stan Lee over to DC Comics for a year, and he redid all the DC heroes the way he would have done them at Marvel in the Just Imagine series.
Yep.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it was great.
remember
We
that.
had Joe Kubert, John Buscema, Walt Simonson, John Cassaday, Jerry Ordway, Jim Lee. It was like all the major artists wanted to do work on this project with Stan. It was great.
So did the movie, did that jump comic sales? I mean, did that give a boost to the industry?
Here's what it did. Number one, it made the world at large aware the comic books were still being published. Number two, it made the world aware that there are these new things called comic book shops. Now, while that was a good thing, the bad thing was, especially in that era, comic book shops were typically in the worst neighborhoods. You had to go up broken down steps on an old walk up, and a lot of parents were intimidated. They didn't just want their kids going or taking their little kids. But yeah, it had an impact. It had an impact on comic book stores and the rise and growth of comic book stores and on sales. Case in point, around Christmas time, I get a call from Jim Galton. Jim was the president of Marvel Comics. And Joe Calamari, one of the great guys, he was the senior vice president and head of legal and business affairs. They said, Michael, we're taking you to lunch. Are you available next Thursday? I said, yeah, I'd love it. That's great. They take me to like one of the most expensive restaurants in New York City. And we're there, and they're ordering very expensive bottles of wine. And finally, about a quarter of the way through, I go, so guys, what's this all about? What's going on?
They're just drinking and having fun.
And they said, this is our thank you lunch. I said, for what? They said, because of Batman, our sales are up over 20%. And about people having discovered comic books again and comic book stores as a thing. So yeah, I know we did have an impact.
I know around here we had the comic book store and the comic book card boom that happened right after 89. So it was probably 1990, 91. That's when I was at school and people started getting into them. But I noticed that there started being multiple comic book stores that were opening, and it was after Batman 89. So
I just wondered
Marvel
what happened.
Masterpieces. It was the Brothers Hildebrand did that real high-end series.
Yeah, I still have some of those. I guess I wonder though, what happened between 89 and then 92 when they decided to break Batman's back in the comics. Like, was that not a gimmick to try to force sales?
Yeah, there were a lot of gimmicks being used, and there have been in that era. The gimmicks included, chrome covers, gold covers, platinum covers, rainbow covers, hologram covers.
The hologram, baby. I remember that.
I've got some Todd McFarlane Spider-Man #1.
Every time you turned around, some superhero was dead.
Yeah.
Yep.
And anybody who is in the general public does not know what we know, which is they're coming back.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So with you being in the industry, did you know ahead of time that was going to happen, or did you read it just like we did?
No. I was very deeply ensconced with everybody up at DC.
What was your feeling on it? Because I remember exactly where I was sitting when I read it. My mom was putting up laundry in her closet, and I was sitting on the floor, and I just kind of sat there in disbelief, like, wait, what?
One of my closest friends from that era and a mentor and a boss at different times was Denny O'Neil, who is one of the greatest writers of the Silver and Bronze Age of comics. And that gave Denny and other people there, creative people, an opportunity to go to new places and try new kinds of stories. I think Denny created Azrael around that time. And all of a sudden Bane became a thing. So, it's great when it's done in a way that opens people up creatively where they could take Batman or any character into new territory. You need that. You need those kind of shots.
Okay.
And
So speaking of the Bane, like the backbreak or whatever, one of our good friends, Gibbs, he's a huge fan of yours, Michael. So if you could say hi to Gibbs, and I'll tell you a fun story about him.
All right. Hi, Gibbs. Where are you?
So he was watching when he was watching the Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah,
is that correct?
Yeah, I was with him.
Yeah. So Shadwick, tell the story. So you're with Gibbs.
Yeah, just the part where where Bane defeats him. He lifts him up over his head and breaks his back. Gibbs is sitting there with like anime size eyes, just like, he did it.
Yeah.
I can't believe he did it.
So he had read the comic, and then when he sees it on screen, he's just like, he did it. Like he was just.
Those are great Easter egg moments for fans. I had the antithesis of that when it became clear to me that Tim was going to have the Joker kill Bruce Wayne's parents. And I said, no, it's not the Joker. It's this guy named Joe Chill. And I said, not anymore. It's the Joker.
Yeah.
So I kind of panicked. So I invited Bob Kane to lunch. And I said, Bob, here's what's going on. I need your opinion. I need to know how you feel about it. And Bob said, well, Michael, he goes, I think it's a great idea. In fact, if I had created, in reality, if Bill and Jerry had created the Joker earlier, I could see us having done that in the comic book. He says, I'm all for it. So I said, fine. But I just made an absolute pest of myself to make sure there was at least another guy with him so that geeks like me could say, well, that's Joe Chill.
I did want to ask, did you have any input on the script at all? Did you have what scenes or elements did you contribute to it?
Well, starting at the beginning, let's go way back to Tom Mankiewicz, who was our first writer.
Okay.
I worked hand in hand with Tom on his drafts when we were just getting out of the starting gate. And again, you got to listen to this in the context of its time. I'm talking about 1979, 1980. So what do you have as reference for the big action franchise? You only had Bond.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
So how can we make a serious Batman be like the best of Bond? So as a result, the two writers I wanted us to consider were Richard Maybaum and Tom Mankiewicz, who I thought were the two best writers of the Bond series. We wanted to approach Guy Hamilton first to direct, who had directed Goldfinger. Ben, my partner, Ben Melniker, legend in the movie business. He was my dad's age. He ran MGM in its Tiffany years. He was the sole executive vice president. All divisions reported to Ben. He was chairman of the film selection committee. He put together the deals for Ben-Hur, Dr. Zhivago, 2001, Easy in their musicals. He negotiated the deal with Colonel Tom Parker to bring Elvis to MGM. And Ben said, well, Michael, I worked at MGM with Ken Adam, who was the production designer on Goldfinger and these Bond films. He goes, let me call Ken. And then he called Bill Tuttle, who was MGM's top special makeup artist. He was in London. So we had the beginnings of a team to assemble. We didn't know it was going to take 10 years. So typically what would happen would be I would get each draft and I would sit and read the draft, and then I would do my comment letter with everything. And that's typically the way that it worked, typically. In the beginning, what I did in the beginning was I did a 17-page single-space typed vision statement for how I saw this movie and what a dark and serious Batman is. And when I was getting rejected by everybody, and the executives from that generation just weren't getting it, they did not understand how you could do Batman without pow, zaps, and whams. My friend Michael Bourne and I actually wrote a screenplay, Return of the Batman, which was a dark and serious Batman. And not that I expected that to be the script that would be made into the movie, but it would be the script that would enable all these executives and agents of talent to get their arms around it. Right. And that story was Robin is off to college. Bruce and Alfred, it's about Bruce and Alfred, this movie. They shut down the manor. He moves into downtown in his condo. And it's the two of them plus Commissioner Gordon. And terrorism had made its first appearance on the shores of America. And Bruce didn't want to do it anymore. He was done with it. But kicking and screaming, he gets dragged back into it. The terrorists wind up blowing up every bridge and tunnel connecting Gotham City to the mainland. And it was kind of Shakespearean in a sense in the way we wrote it. And what was really funny, maybe around 1990 or so, a certain executive who will go nameless said to me one day, he goes, Michael, the world doesn't know this, but I'm sure you realize you created The Dark Knight Returns 7 years or 10 years before Frank did.
Frank Miller.
Yeah.
I said, coincidence, and if Frank deserves all the credit and all of that, I said, no, I don't accept that. I said, we were just doing what we had to do to educate people.
Well, you also talked about a story called, I think it was Batman Deconstructed, where he's financially bankrupt.
I would still like to do that.
Well, I think Chris Nolan beat you to it.
But I mean, in the comic books, what I want to do is different. What I would like to see done, where he really doesn't have the money and he has to go back to his roots, and just use the grappling hooks and the things that are in his belt. He's got no computers, he's got no car, he's got no this, he's got no that, and for maybe a year, get the emphasis off all the toys and the gadgets, and just go back to him using his brain.
See, I love that. I much prefer him without the gadgets. One of the things from Batman '89 was that hard directional lighting that kept his face in the shadows all the time. And every movie since then has kind of moved away from that. Even Batman Returns went more to it was a Tim Burton movie with Batman in it, basically.
Yeah.
As a kid, I didn't pick up on all of the backlash. People saying it was too dark, or whatever. I actually thought it was more cartoonish than the original. I thought Batman '89 was darker.
Well,
and I liked it.
Did not agree with you.
No, I'm aware. But
I kind of wanted like a Batman story where like Batman's mowing grass and then he comes to my house and he mows my lawn and then he's like, do you want to be Robin? And then I'm like, yeah, let's do this. So yeah, let's make that happen.
My God, how did we miss not hiring you as the writer?
Right.
Some people just have a gift, Michael. Some people just have a gift.
It's kind of like you making up the story of the Shadow on Niagara Falls. Just in the moment.
That was amazing. That was amazing.
As I said in the book, when you see the door open a crack, you just shove your foot into it and see where it takes you. But you don't pass up any opportunity like that.
That actually brings up. I have a personal question, if you'll indulge me, and it's kind of offshoot of what you just said, because I noticed in your audiobook, it's a wonderful book. Everyone again, for the 50th time, if we haven't mentioned it, everybody should go listen to it.
Yeah,
boil them, pick it up, and then of course go see the production soon to be released. But I noticed personally in your book, you seem to be this really introverted kid. Obviously, comic books are a sense of escapism, not tremendously athletic, potentially one of the first comic book nerds of all, of all time. But by the end, you're a completely different person. You've transitioned from, the shy introverted kid into someone, like you said, who's willing to stick their foot in the door, who seems to not be scared to put yourself out there. And I wonder if there was a transitional moment for you where that happened, or was it over time? Like, how do you reconcile, being one way earlier on in the book? Obviously you grew and mature, but was there a moment that brought you to where you are now in your career from being, a shy kid?
Yeah. What was your bat that crashed through the window?
It's very simple. It was my superhero comic books that taught me since I was a little kid that everybody has a secret identity and that you evolve, and you don't need superpower to do it. Batman proves that. You evolve And I became Spider-Man from Peter Parker. I became Superman from Clark Kent. I became Batman from Bruce Wayne. It's all I knew. That's the way of the world. That's how life would be. So,
I mean, even so much like in your commencement speech, like you won some awards and things for how epic your speeches have been, and just public speaking in front of thousands and thousands of people. Like, it's just crazy.
I'm a storyteller, and I'm passionate about my stories. I can't wait for an opportunity like I have with you guys now to tell some stories. It's the way I teach too. When I go back once a year to Indiana University. I teach 2 intensive courses in the media school for 2 weeks on the business of producing motion pictures and experiential learning live from Hollywood, where I have 30 of my friends who represent every single aspect of making movies, TV, and animation. Mark Hamill has spoken to my class on acting.
Wow.
Kevin Conroy did my class every year, and
Oh,
including
man, that's awesome.
he did my class 10 days before he passed away.
I'm going to miss him so much when this new animated series comes out. I have not heard the new guy's Batman voice yet, but
yeah, that one hurt.
We all need to give him a break.
Yeah,
that would be the first thing that Kevin would say.
Yeah. Well, just like we talked about before, we're not going to pass judgment on anybody until we hear it. But
right,
I have no doubt it's going to be great. Paul Dini and Bruce Timm. I think this was their original version, but Fox was hesitant to let them go as dark as they wanted to.
Look, I am Paul Dini's greatest fan.
You might be a second biggest fan.
Years ago, Paul wrote a live-action feature film script for Batman Beyond that was incredible. And
I want that to happen so bad with Michael Keaton, and I cannot. And I'm sorry, I can't remember this director's name. Adoni. He directed the new Dune movies. The French guy. Man, I would love to see him take on Batman Beyond with Michael Keaton.
Many years ago when Paul wrote the script, I envisioned it as a movie for Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
Clint Eastwood playing Bruce Wayne at age 80.
Oh, yeah.
That would have been so cool.
We basically had that in Gran Torino, I think.
version one.
Get off my lawn.
Yeah, what could have been.
Yeah. Well, Michael, we've gone over a little bit, and I know that you're a busy man. Man, we can't thank you enough for being on here with us. Yeah. This means the world to us, and especially, of course, to Shadwick over there. Yeah. Super fan number one.
Yeah, I have about 3 pages more of notes.
I was going to say you might want to watch your email box because he may eclipse the 170 questions.
All right, let me suggest this. Why don't we do a part 2 in October after Joker Folie à Deux opens on October 4th, and The Boy Who Loved Batman opens in Tampa on October 1st.
Okay,
please, thank you.
And I may very well try to meet you in Tampa.
That would be great, guys. I would love that.
My birthday is in October, so I think I'm just going to buy myself
a good
gift.
birthday trip.
Yeah,
man. Yeah,
I'm going to do it.
So we always end every show with our Norm Macdonald clip of the week, and I think you'll particularly enjoy this one. So Thank you again, Michael, for coming on here, and ladies and gentlemen, our Norm Macdonald clip of the week.
The most disturbing thing about Disneyland is seeing all those smiling people walking around wearing Mickey Mouse's severed scalp.
And hey, ladies and gentlemen. When Mozart would sit down to compose a new piano concerto, he'd first pause, close his eyes, and say to himself, I better make this as hard as to play.